What's up, folks? This is Steel. Welcome to History and Combat.
Me no like it, see.
Today's match features the Myoko, one of my favorite and least favorite ships in the game. It's the Japanese Tier 7 cruiser, and the third cruiser in the Japanese line that features 8-inch guns. The match I'll be featuring is a pretty solid match, around 98,000 damage, 3 kills. Nothing really to brag about. Maybe I could tell my mom, she might be impressed. I'm in a division with my good friends Captain Crit and Drinking 247 once again, in a couple of Blizkavitsas. As you can see, we're on Hotspot, and that's one of the reasons why I chose this match. And that's because Hotspot has a tendency to play out differently every single time you get in it, and this one is no exception. I face off against several different types of opponents, which I think is important to note with the Myoko, because it's how you play those opponents that determines your ultimate success or failure with this ship. It is unforgiving.
I consider myself a better than average player, and if I go to C and they overcommit and I'm dead, that really hurts, right? Whereas if I can safely take B and then assess what's at C and try to take it, then that's tits.
Well, I'm a completely average player, so if I die, it's really not that big a deal.
That's funny, dude. Go to C. Send the cannon fodder to C.
The Myoko was launched in April of 1927. Now, you might already know the Washington Naval Treaty imposed a limitation on the displacement of cruisers, and the Myoko was Japan's first 10,000-ton cruiser. It was also the first heavy cruiser ever to support 8-inch guns. Now, the Myoko was designed to be a 10,000-ton cruiser, but it didn't end up that way. It actually ended up being around 15,000 tons after the treaty was no longer in effect and Japan was free to modernize it and modify it. In real life, as with the game, the Myoko is fast. It also has those 8-inch guns, and it also has torpedoes, which were the best in the world at the time. And it saw plenty of action in World War II. It was involved in at least 6 battles and multiple campaigns, that which I'll get into in a little bit later.
All the destroyers have been spotted, there's nothing at B.
But it was in the months leading up to the end of the war that the Myoko faced its toughest trial. What emerges are 2 harrowing tales at sea, one of the Myoko and the other of the U.S. Navy submarine Burgal.
There's nothing that can spot me, I'm just cutting throttle, capping.
At this point in the match, I want you to take note of something I think might help you when you play your Myoko, and that is that I'm not doing circles while I engage this Amagi. I'm swimming. It's something that I learned after playing this thing for about 20 matches. And the reason why I bring it up is because it's counterintuitive, really. Now, some of you might already know who have Myokos know that this thing gets sit a lot. I mean a lot. And the thing that players do when they know they're playing a ship that gets citadeled really easily is they circle. But what I found is you'll get citadeled no matter how you circle, no matter how hard you turn. And when a battleship is putting 9 or 10 rounds in a 200-yard radius, you really can't turn out. If they hit you, they'll sit you. So what I started doing was reducing my predictability and maintaining my speed.
In the deep, deep doo-doo.
And swimming helps me do that. I'm alternating half rudder left, half rudder right, full rudder, and back. This is not a predictable pattern of a hard rudder turn in one direction. And the added bonus is I keep my guns 10 times more active, as the turret rotation of the Myoko is god-awful. One of the most difficult problems I encountered when trying to figure out what the Myoko was all about was trying to figure out what its role was. It's not a brawler because of the lousy turret rotation. It doesn't have particularly good AA. It does a pretty good job of shooting at destroyers that are within 10 kilometers, but it's terrible at chasing them down because you're just driving closer and closer to the enemy battleships, who can massively hit you. A lot of you might say, stay with the battleships, and it does a pretty good job at range attacking from battleship distance. But the way the meta seems to be playing out is enemy battleships will not leave you alone if you're spotted. They'll just keep firing salvo after salvo until you're in iron bottom sound. What it is good at, though, is ranging back and forth between caps on your side of the map, scaring away enemy destroyers if not killing them, So I guess if I had to put a label on it, I would say it's good at area denial. And if you do that well enough and you survive long enough, gaps will start opening up and you'll be able to force some small group engagements, which the Myoko is pretty good at. Like I said before, the Myoko was involved in 6 major battles in World War II. The Battle of Java Sea, the Battle of Coral Sea, Battle of Midway, Battle of Empress Augusta Bay, Battle of the Philippine Sea, and the Battle of Leyte Gulf. At Java Sea, it was actually credited with sinking the British heavy cruiser Exeter. But after that, you can notice that the Myoko, its career kind of mimicked how the Pacific War was going for the Japanese. At the beginning of the war, the Japanese destroyers and cruisers were like a well-oiled machine, trained to night fight under the harshest conditions. It had that huge early victory at Java Sea. Then as the Pacific War turned to more of an air war, it acted more of like a support ship for all of the carrier fleets. And then the tide started to turn. The Battle of Empress Augusta Bay was a small but significant victory for the United States Navy. But it can also be used as an example of how the Japanese Navy just simply lost its mojo. During the Battle of Empress Augusta Bay, the Myoko actually collided with one of its destroyers. The Hatsukaze was disabled and later sunk by gunfire. But after the Myoko was torpedoed at the Battle of Subian Sea on October 24, 1944, she and the Japanese Navy could never recover. The Myoko was sent to Singapore for repair on November 2nd, 1944. By December 5th, it was determined that the Myoko was repaired enough for it to be able to set sail for the home islands for a full recovery. But as the fates would have it, that departure was delayed until December 12th, and it was just those few days that put the Myoko on course for its engagement with the USS Burgall.
Thank you for getting it off cooldown. I deserved that taste, Tom, after the first.
By that time, the U.S. Navy submarine Burgall was already underway to the Indochina coast to lay some sea mines. She was almost at her destination in some extremely shallow waters when her night radar picked up 2 targets, the Myoko and Fubuki-class destroyer Ushio.
If I get my smoke off cooldown.
Despite not being submerged, Commander J.M. Hyde decided to engage. And as he crept the Burgall closer and closer, he could have only hoped that he didn't get spotted. But he kept going anyway, closer and closer till he reached around 3,300 yards, which in torpedo terms is in your face. And that's when he launched. All about torpedoes. Spotters reported 2 massive explosions and huge fireballs. They thought they tore the cruiser in half.
Of course my throttle's out. Of course. And I'm facing
just kill Otago.
Oh, okay.
Hyde watched as the destroyer closed with the cruiser, thinking that he might have actually hit both ships. So he took the chance, turned around to reload and re-engage. But the Ushio was not damaged. In fact, she was laying a trap. So as the Burgall turned around to re-engage, when it got to about 3,000 yards this time, the Ushio opened fire, landing a hit on the first salvo. Commander Hyde immediately aborted the attack, desperate for the cover of darkness. And although the Burgall and the Myoko both survived the encounter, their stories had just begun.
Any area where you go to and you can never escape is not a good area to go to.
Right.
If it's bad and you can't escape, it's not good to go to it.
The second type of engagement I want to profile is the one right here, and that's a close-range engagement with another cruiser.
He's just gotta carry.
The Myoko is 1 tier higher than the Cleveland, and I have bigger guns. But that doesn't mean I can just simply drive in and brutalize the Cleveland. In fact, with 6-inch guns at this close range, you're going to see that he's the one that actually outclasses me here.
No.
Don't let him do that to you. What the hell, dude? Tommy.
He has more guns, a faster reload, and a turret that can track me, whereas the 8-inch guns on the Myoko simply just can't keep up. So what you have to do against other cruisers, and it actually does work, angle.
Your front gun shooting? Couldn't tell.
Beach, island, island, island.
There. Phew! I won that match simply because I angled and he didn't. But I lost way too much health. I simply can't imagine if he had angled what kind of trouble I would have been in. But more importantly, it goes to show that at close ranges, there's nothing that an 8-inch shell can do that a 6-inch shell can't do even better. With their rounds per salvo, turret rotation, and especially their rate of fire, 6-inch guns at close ranges can wreck. Watch out for AP shooting Clevelands.
Oh my god, you got one gun in the front going one way, one going the other way.
But for ranged attacks, it's a completely different story.
They're like, hey, which way did he go?
Torps.
After the Burgal was scared off, the Japanese had a chance to inspect the damage to the Myoko, and they indeed determined that it was hit by either one or maybe even perhaps two torpedoes. They couldn't tell. The afterdeck was shattered, part of the stern actually even fell off, but as luck would have it, although the Myoko couldn't steer, it still had one screw turning and it could maintain around 6 knots. On top of that, miraculously, no one was killed on the Myoko. It's amazing. So she was immediately put under tow by little old Ushio. The next day some transports arrived to help, but they were really small ships. But the bad news was the sea was getting worse, and due to constant buffeting of the cables, they snapped. The Myoko fell away helplessly into the waves created by the storm, which actually turned out to be a typhoon. After the engagement, the USS Burgal wasn't in a great situation either. Actually, it was a terrible situation. She couldn't submerge due to the gunfire hit, and she was 1,200 miles deep into enemy territory. So Commander Hyde had to make some really tough decisions, and he gambled. He gambled that he wouldn't get spotted through the Java Sea. The next day, the Burgal met up with the USS Angler, another submarine. They received orders to scuttle the Burgal, but in typical US Navy fashion, they ignored the orders and pretended like they didn't receive them. They decided to continue on with a skeleton crew. They asked for volunteers, and literally every sailor raised his hand, and Hyde was forced to choose.
Probably get torps out.
Once the Burgal got underway, she was still facing the most dangerous leg of her journey, a dash through the Karamata Strait.
You could probably jack that Pensacola one-on-one.
That evening, the Burgal, running full silent, came so close to a Japanese patrol ship that they said they heard Japanese voices on its deck.
I thought Pensacola was full life.
Back to the match for a second. This is the last type of engagement that I wanted to profile with the Myoko, and it's one that the Myoko excels at, and that's a long-range engagement with another cruiser.
He's shooting at the other Otago on that cell.
Boom!
Was it?
He
Oh,
got
dude,
crushed.
you crushed him.
New Mexico's getting crushed too. Nope, he missed. He did.
The USS Burgal luckily was not spotted and arrived back in port on December 20th. But at that time, the Myoko was still drifting loose in the middle of a typhoon. But the Myoko stayed seaworthy, and she survived the storm. She was later picked up by a heavy cruiser and towed back to Singapore. It never ceases to amaze me the bravery of the men that served on these ships. But I'm also thankful for historians like Anthony Tully, who allowed me to tell this tale. Because if it wasn't for individuals like him, stories like this would be lost, perhaps forever. If you're interested in more details about the Burgal and Myoko, I urge you to visit Anthony Tully's website, combinedfleet.com. It's got a lot of great content about the Japanese Navy during World War II, including pictures of the Myoko and the Burgal. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Feel free to like or comment, and if you're interested in seeing more content in the future, subscribe. My live stream is currently on Twitch at the URL you can see right there. And if you're interested in even more World of Warships videos, I highly recommend The Taste. The link is down below. Thanks again.